Welcome to Washington in Focus Daily. It is Monday, July 27th, 2026. I'm Carlene Johnson, the Center Square, Washington's state government reporter. And in today's episode, the bite of Seattle over the weekend ended in tragedy with a shootout. 3 dead, at least 4 others injured, and 1 in custody. A 15-year-old now charged with some of this violence. Of course, innocent bystanders, including a 2-year-old child, injured in this exchange of gunfire. The latest from the mayor and other officials, and growing pressure on city officials to explain why in the world it took 5 hours from the time of the shooting until members of the media received an update like late on Sunday evening. That a lawsuit has been filed challenging the constitutionality of the 2022 law that allows the attorney general to basically change the wording on the ballot for initiatives. In this case, we're talking about what will appear on the ballot for Initiative 645, which is the request to voters. Do you like the income tax? Do you want to repeal the income tax? So, what is called the PIID that goes on the ballot, the subject next to that initiative is the public investment impact disclosure. And this is required alongside any initiative to say, okay, voter, if you want to repeal this, this is what the potential impacts to the state budget can be. Well, again, this lawsuit now challenging the very appearance of that disclosure statement alongside the initiative. And then we are just 1 week tomorrow, 1 week away from the August 4th primary, when Washington voters will determine top 2 vote getters. Many of these races, including some congressional contests that have more than 10 candidates vying for the top 2 positions, because again, only the top 2 vote getters in what they call our jungle primary advance on to the November election. And in District 4 for Congress, that's one of those races where the field is very wide. So I had a chance on Friday to interview the top Democrat in the contest who believes he will be the top vote getter, even though it's a very red district. Interesting conversation with him when I asked him about the rise of Democratic Socialist candidates in America. All right, let's dive in. 3 people on Sunday were killed as the bite of Seattle was winding down. This is at the Seattle Center where the Space Needle is, iconic part of the city. And just after 6 o'clock, gunshots rang out. And ultimately, 3 people were killed, at least 4 others injured. I say at least because there was some contradiction even in the late morning press conference today on Monday from the mayor as to whether or not there might be an 8th victim or not, somebody that showed up at a hospital with injuries. We have a 15-year-old boy now charged in this shooting. The exchange of gunfire um, potentially could be gang related. We don't know at this point. And one of those injured and now released from the hospital may, in fact, be one of those who returned gunfire. Whether or not that returned gunfire is responsible for any of the other injuries, we don't know yet. A lot of these questions are still out there. And city leaders on Sunday night, I was watching on X to find out when that press conference was going to happen. My phone started blowing up shortly after the initial gunfire. I had a friend whose daughter was at the bite of Seattle and was very concerned about her. It wasn't until 11 o'clock on Sunday evening that finally we had a press conference, and we had Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson and police officials, Governor Bob Ferguson, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, all standing up there to face the reporters who had been waiting, again, more than 5 hours for some answers. So, right off the bat, as Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson started this press conference, she started right in railing against gun violence. We have to do something about gun violence. Reporters weren't having it, though. It was quite interesting. And I'm going to share this exchange with you because this reporter, I think it was a reporter from Cairo TV, who, initially interrupted about a minute into Mayor Wilson's railing against gun violence and not providing information that reporters had waited 5 hours to get interrupted her. So, this video I'm going to share with you is courtesy of Discovery Institute's Jonathan Cho, who posted the entire press conference on his X page.
Thank you for your patience as we've been working to make sure that we can provide accurate information. I'm sorry that we're having to gather here tonight under these tragic circumstances. What happened here today at the Seattle Center was an unbelievable tragedy, and a horrific act of violence. My heart right now is with the victims and their families and with everyone in our community who is reeling from what happened here today. We have far too much gun violence in this city and in this country, and we're coming off of a week in Seattle where we've had 3 major incidents of gun violence in just a few days. We have a lot of work to do as a city and as a country to make this better.
I get your passion, Mayor, but we need to know what happened tonight, please.
Yes, so our focus right now is with this investigation, with learning what happened so that we can provide accurate information to the public, with supporting the victims. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Tyrone Davis to tell you what we know.
So this afternoon, we had officers working our Bite of Seattle event. At 6:01 p.m., gunshots were heard. We had officers in the area, in the immediate area when these gunshots went off. Officers responded and addressed one of the shooters. That person gave up and was taken into custody. There was another person that we believe that was also involved that fled the scene, and officers began an active search for that person. We discovered as we got to the scene that there were a total of 7 victims that suffered gunshot wounds at the scene. Officers immediately began to perform CPR and first aid on several victims. We had a total of 4 victims that were transported by the Seattle Fire Department to Harborview Medical Center. We had another two more victims that remained on the scene and were unfortunately unable to survive their injuries. So that's a total of 7 victims. We had another victim that later showed up at the University of Washington Medical Center with also a gunshot wound. One of the victims at Harborview Medical Center did not survive their injuries. So now we have a total of 3 fatalities out of those 7 victims.
So, again, highly unusual after you have what they call a mass shooting in the city of Seattle, Bite of Seattle, to wait 5 hours to have to get some answers. We didn't even know if there was still a suspect outstanding at that point. That's what the rumors were, that there was one in custody and one outstanding. So people were like, okay, tell me who we're looking for. Give me some description. What was this person wearing? Who should we be watching out for? Is there still a danger to the community? And there's been a lot of frustration I've seen in media reports today online about this. People saying, why did it take so long? Now, my colleague Randy Diamond, who writes up stories for the city of Seattle for our Center Square Washington page, is putting up an article with the very latest on this today. So I encourage you to check that out. There are going to be questions in the days and weeks to come. What about the cameras at Seattle Center? Of course, lots of conversation about cameras, whether those are flock cameras or other cameras that the city operates. She wanted those off. You remember during the World Cup, under pressure, she acquiesced, and those cameras around the stadium district were turned on, only to be turned off within hours of that final match happening again. So those questions will be continually asked, and we'll be seeking answers. And I encourage you to, again, check out that article of Randy's. But I want to share with you the latest we know about those who lost their lives. Those who died were a 19-year-old man, a 44-year-old man, and a 56-year-old woman. Now, 2 of those victims died at the scene. 1 died at the hospital. And I also want to put up this reaction from Washington Democratic Party Chair Shasti Conrad, who emailed the Center Square her reaction after the shooting. She writes, while we will continue to channel our grief and rage over these horrific acts towards improving our communities. Our focus right now remains with those whose lives will never be the same and our neighbors grieving an all too common and preventable act of gun violence. And then Republican Chair Jim Walsh also emailed a response that said in part, shockingly, Wilson and Ferguson, talking about Mayor Wilson and Governor Ferguson, appear to have instructed the Seattle Police Department, he meant, to say not to brief the media on the details of the gang violence for 5 hours after it happened. One SPD officer was caught on camera telling reporters that no briefing would take place until dignitaries arrived. Wilson and Ferguson's slow response last night is an embarrassment for everyone in Washington. That, again, is the response from Republican Party Chairman Jim Walsh to that delay that took place. I did watch that press conference late last night as the governor stood there and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal were there. I was kind of wondering why it was necessary to have them there if it wasn't just for the appearance sake of, yeah, they wanted to show up because this is kind of a big deal. I'm not sure if waiting for them is the reason why it had to be a 5-hour delay to get this important information out about a mass shooting was entirely necessary. So I know that our colleagues will be continuing to press for answers on that in the days and weeks to come. All right. Now, a lawsuit has been filed challenging the constitutionality of the 2022 law in Washington that allows the AG's office to change the wording of a ballot title that appears next to an initiative. In this case, we're talking about Initiative 645, the initiative aimed at potentially repealing the income tax. So, this is what's called the PIID. This is the Public Investment Impact Disclosure. And that's required on ballot statements, but they're supposed to be neutral. It's supposed to not be something that says, if you pass this, the sky will fall. If you pass this, all these horrible things will happen. It's supposed to be a very neutral ballot statement. But the lawsuit challenge here and others contend that it's anything but neutral. And so Arthur West is the name of the gentleman who has filed. Last Friday, he filed in Thurston County Superior Court a lawsuit taking issue with the disclosure statements, basically saying you can't amend an initiative on the ballot with these public disclosure statements because voters who signed these petitions to qualify this for the ballot had the subject title and a subject description of what it would accomplish if they pass it. Now that's being amended on the ballot to say something in addition to that. By the way, if you pass this, it's going to take away all this other funding because the PIID for this initiative will basically says on there, if you pass this, if you say yes to repeal the income tax, it will cut funding for public education. It will cut funding for higher education. It will cut funding for health insurance programs. When in fact, that is an inaccurate statement, opponents say. And that is because only 5% of income tax revenues are dedicated to the Fair Start for Kids program. The other 95%, lawmakers can do whatever they want with it. They can put it in the general fund and dedicate it to whatever pet program for whatever year they have. There was zero guarantee in the way the income tax law was written that any of those funds are dedicated to education, whether it's K through 12, higher ed, or then to healthcare programs. And so that's the kind of the gist of the lawsuit. So here is Arthur West talking about some recent polling that was done within the last couple of years. So when you put up these public disclosure statements on the ballot next to an initiative, he said the polling shows that dramatically changes how voters are going to respond to that initiative question.
Some polling that's been done that shows that this type of a disclosure statement in 3 other initiatives dropped support by 14 to 19%, which is just fatal to any measure. So this is not a neutral disclosure type law. This is a law that was designed to make tax initiatives impossible. And there's polling that shows that that's what the effect is. So this is a rather heavy-handed attempt by the Democrats to derail the Republican use of the initiatives to mess with their taxes. And that's been a dynamic, for 30 years, I've seen this dynamic play out with.
Now, Mr. West was headed to the court just after our interview this Monday morning, and he was hoping to get an expedited review. Potentially, you said August the 7th for the court to consider this, because if they choose to intervene, there's a very narrow window. August the 21st is the deadline for ballots and voter pamphlets to be printed out for the general election. It's that soon because, of course, we have ballots to be sent overseas to members of the military and other folks who are out of the country. So get those ballots filled out for the primary if you've not yet done so. It's 1 week from tomorrow. I wanted to tease you that I'm going to share part of an interview that I did today. I'm going to use it in tomorrow's episode of Washington Focus Daily with Julie Wise from the Office of King County Elections, because I wanted to ask her. So, what a returns looks like so far, how great of a return do you expect overall? And she told me as of today, 7% of ballots had been returned. So it's pretty low, but they expect it to be up around 45% when all is said and done. But you need to get those ballots filled out sooner rather than later. Um, I know a lot of folks have questions about the integrity of the election system, some questions based on what we found out about last week in New Jersey with all of the non-citizens who went in to get uh, driver's licenses and then were automatically registered to vote. So I asked her about that. So I encourage you to check out tomorrow's episode for a lot more. Now, on the primary election theme, ours is a top two primary in Washington. You're probably familiar by now. It's not brand new. Regardless of party, that means the top two vote getters are going to advance after the August 4th results to the November election. We have contests for Senate, House positions, Congress, assessor, of course, all these Supreme Court positions. So it's important if you want to have a say in who is advancing on. And some of these races have many, many candidates running. It's important to participate in the primary. I know it's summer. I know everybody's busy, but we've had our ballots for the last week and a half. I concede I too did not fill mine out until this past weekend and got that in the mail just today, but it's important to fill those out. And I want to share with you an interview that I got last Friday with a Democrat who may well finish on the top of the heap after August 4 in a very red central Washington congressional district. This is District 4. This is the seat being vacated by Congressman Dan Newhouse, a Republican. This is a large district. This covers, I'm going to read this, parts of Douglas, Okanagan, Grant, Yakima, Benton, and Klickitat, as well as parts of Adams and Franklin County. So it is a very large swath, kind of cut right down the middle of Washington state, basically from north to south. And the district is dominated primarily by a large population area in Yakima and also the Tri-Cities. And it's an R+10 district. And that means Republicans pretty much carry this. In fact, it is the most reliably red district in our state. Now, that being said, we have Democratic candidate John Dureski, Air Force veteran, feeling very good, very confident, he says, about the fact he expects to finish the primary on the top of the heap. Now, he concedes that that's likely in large part because the Republicans and some of the independents running are splintering up, that especially when you've got, Amanda McKinney, Jared Sessler, Matt Banky, all well-known names and folks running for that on the Republican side. And of course, you've got McKinney and Sessler arguing over who really got the Trump endorsement. We've talked about that. Anyway, he thinks it's going to ultimately benefit him. And he told me that, he thinks he's going to do well even after the primary, even though it's a reliably red district. But I had to ask him um, about the rise of Democratic Socialists in the party. They've been winning primaries across the country, as I'm sure you're well aware. So I asked him specifically about the DSA, what he thinks about him. Does he align with them? And here's his response.
The rise of socialism is of the DSA is not the Party's fault. It is kind of, but it's as much the Republicans' fault for doing so little to help the working class young people of this country. And to a young person who has no chance to get ahead, no chance to buy a house, and can't afford health care, what difference does it make to him whether you call it capitalism or socialism? It doesn't matter to him. He can't pay his bills. He's got to work 2 or 3 jobs. And so this is a mistake that I think the Republicans are really responsible for. They're out cutting SNAP benefits right now. They're out cutting health insurance benefits and with the big beautiful bill. And now Social Security is on the brink of running out of money. And so they think they're going to cut benefits to Social Security as well. Socialism is not people or ideas that I don't like. Socialism is a specific thing. And the person who's taken means of production right now in our country is not the Democrats. The Democrats would not do this. No, it's the Trump administration. The Trump administration is running a command economy using tariffs to get special privileges for favored industries and actually taking equity shares of actual companies. That's the definition of communism. And yet they are trying to use communism on us. It's not going to work anymore. They need a new shtick.
Now, John Dureski, the Democrat that you just heard from, says he's been hearing from a lot of disillusioned Republicans in the district who are ready to support him. So we'll see how the numbers shake out after the results start to come in after next week's August 4th primary. Again, that's just a week from tomorrow. If that ballot's still sitting there on the kitchen counter, the dining table, it's time to get that filled out and sent back in. All of Washington's U.S. House seats are up for election in this primary. And there are also an historic number of state Supreme Court races, 5 of them. And some are opportunities for challengers to newly appointed Supreme Court incumbents, people that were recently put into place by Governor Bob Ferguson. So you should check out your voters pamphlet, or also check out the Center Square Washington page, where my colleague Tim Clauser has been interviewing these candidates for the Supreme Court races in recent weeks, doing a Q&A with them. You can find a lot more information about that again on our page. Some county and city positions, depending on where you live. There's a lot on the primary ballot, so time to get that filled out. So that's it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for this Monday, July the 27th. As always, thank you for watching, like, and subscribe. We appreciate that, and we hope to see you again on Tuesday.